sounds on.
And we're live.
Okay, you're good.
This is Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. It is 6:01 p.m. This is the Bluff Town Council regular meeting. Roll call.
Linda Sosa.
Jim Sayers.
Luann Hook.
Ann Lepinen. Grant Murray may not make it today. He's excused if he doesn't make it. Then the first thing is the approval of the Bluff Town Council regular meeting minutes of April 5th, 2022. Has everybody read them? Are there any changes, modifications, points of discussion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Sorry, I was muted. I'll second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then it's 4 ayes. This is a public comment period. There's a 3-minute time limit for any person who wishes to speak. If you exceed the 3-minute, Jim Sayers will mute your mic.
Really?
You will.
Okay, just give me a second here. You got a stopwatch on here. Okay.
I can do a stopwatch.
Well, I've got one on my phone here.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure I got it right here. If somebody wants to start talking, here I am.
Is there anyone who wants to make a public comment? If so, unmute yourself or give us a signal that you want to be unmuted. I'll give it another few seconds. Otherwise, I'll assume that there are no public comments. All right, hearing none, then we will exit public comment and move to the next item, which was going to be the introduction of Dr. Grant Sonata from the San Juan Public Health. But I didn't communicate very clearly, and so he'll be coming in at our next meeting, which is Tuesday, May 3rd. And then he will be introduced and people will have a chance to tell him what a great job he's doing, and he can explain, kind of what the next step with San Juan Public Health would be. Then moving to unfinished business. Luann, this is yours. It's the update on Priority Telecommunications app and the cards.
Yes, so GETS is the priority calling. So if you end up in an emergency where the lines are all blocked, you can get a phone call through to the people that you need to talk to, whether it's another person on the council or a sheriff's officer or wherever, you can get a call through. So the first card showed up. I thought they were going to send like a pack of 10, but they just sent one. So the next step is to go online and I'll request different ones be sent to the different people that we had decided prior. So if there are changes in those thoughts, let me know, but I can request those. And then each person is given it their own PIN number, and each person goes back in and confirms that they've gotten the card, does the practice phone calls, and then relinquishes it when they're no longer part of the town. So those just came, yesterday, I believe, so.
And just one came?
Yeah, just mine came. So I'll have it there, the dispatch radio, but yeah, and it just has a phone number that you call and then you enter a PIN number and then you can get through if all the lines are blocked. So you just use it in the event of that sort of problem. Like at 9/11, that was one of the big problems is nobody could get through on calls. Everybody jammed them up. We have that problem a little bit here when the power goes off. So everybody starts calling around, but anyway, it'll hopefully never happen, but it once in a while could. And anybody that has one could be out on a completely different incident, some car wreck somewhere, and they could use that to get help to somebody.
So does it make the cards come faster if we each individually go in and put the app on and do the steps?
I know. There's this whole process. So, and Anthony, or Fire Chief Anthony, he had tried earlier. And so he had emailed and said he really appreciated that I was pushing it through, because there is a lot of governmental red tape that they want to make sure whoever has them should have them, I guess. Same thing. They're protecting that little link of priority calling. So this is really close to being pushed through now. So it'll probably take another 2 weeks before the other cards come. But this is definitely the fastest way, unfortunately.
Okay.
Excuse me, they solicited us on this, didn't they? Did they not? I mean, they kind of.
I know. Well, so Anne's shaking her head no, but I don't know, but I did sort of check and make sure it was really a government thing, and it is.
Yeah.
But it did seem like they came to us. I don't know. Did you find them somewhere, Anne?
Yes, if everybody would remember, they did a presentation through the LEPC
Yeah.
2 or 3 months ago. So Tammy Gallegos had them as a presenter, and I saw Kathy Orcott at that, and then I followed up with her to say we wanted her to present to us, and she presented to us. But it started with the law enforcement committee that I'm on.
Okay. Yeah, it definitely seems legit. And she was a lot of fun. Then she bumped me to the next person, and she's still open for any questions, but there aren't any questions. It's just a matter of submitting it and waiting and then waiting for stuff to come back. So it's
Okay. Well, good. Thank you for getting that underway.
yeah.
Thanks.
All right, then number 2, report on the CCC design review team meetings and the restoration of Bears Ears National Monument celebration. I think that's Jim's.
Yeah, it was really a birthday celebration of 10 years, I believe, the 10-year anniversary. And so it was a look back for many people. It seemed to go very, very well. It was not as heavily attended as we had perhaps anticipated, but as several people pointed out beforehand, Heather mentioned that, well, it's Easter week, maybe people are going to be busy already. So, but it was good. Everything went very smoothly. They worked the kitchen pretty hard for a few hours. It's amazing. It was room for 4, 5, 6 cooks in there, and they produced enough food for easily 100 people, or perhaps more. Between that and the grills outside, without blinking an eye, there are just some really serious equipment in that kitchen that I really like. Yeah. But everything went well on that. I was there for most of the day. As far as the committee is concerned, the design review committee, did anybody have any questions about the anniversary, the Saturday?
No, thanks for doing that. I'm sorry I was out of town, but it sounds like it was successful.
Yeah, it was. It came together as those events usually do. They are used to that. There are many. This often happens. I know many people gather and have to be fed, so everybody has a lot of experience with that. The design review committee today was essentially that we listened to Citizen Lebanon about the possibility of using space over at the CCC for a recycling center or bin or receptacle of some kind. And that was, I don't think any decision has been made on that, but Anne presented that today. And it seems like a reasonable possibility to me, but we'll probably know by the next meeting we have, maybe before that, I don't know. We went down the agenda and talked about keys and policies. We made some key policies that have already been violated, but nothing like violating a policy before it exists. That's okay. We agreed pretty much essentially that a scope of work needed to be produced one way or another. We talked about a project director and that simultaneously with getting a project director would have to be some kind of scope of work, obviously, and costs and so forth. So that was briefly discussed and we are in agreement on that. And we're going to kind of move forward on that. We talked a little bit about various designs that they would like to do and that they would like to see. They're aspirational of all kinds of pretty neat solar or not energy saving solutions. And we talked about some of those. And that was really most of it. We talked about the interior, what our separate ideas were of preparing the CCC for subdivision, and that's really going to occupy some of our discussion time for this meeting and the next few meetings. I'm pretty sure that's going to be front and center, is moving forward on getting to the point of subdivision, which is going to require an agreed upon scope of work and some other, obviously, a lot of design ideas. But so generally that's it. Did anybody have any specific questions? I know that was pretty general.
Yeah, I have a couple questions relating kind of back to the meeting before, or maybe even two. There was, in the meeting minutes and in our meeting, Grant and you talked about this $100,000 grant and fire suppression. First of all, could we get a copy of the grant so that the council can look at what that grant was about? And was the grant specifically made by UDB, or was it made jointly with the town of Bluff? And is it $100,000 set aside by UDB for fire suppression, or is it, I'm not sure how to word this, a $200,000 figure was tossed out and a $100,000 figure was tossed out? And I'm just wondering.
I can clarify that. Okay. You want me to right now?
Yeah.
That grant, as far as I know, it was applied for by Dave Conine from UDB. We were not asked to supply any kind of a letter. It is, the grant came from, why am I blanking on this?
It was somebody up in South Dakota. It was
North Dakota. It's a Native American oriented granting nonprofit, and he was able to put the grant together very quickly. It took him a couple of nights. He talked to the director. They were receptive, and he did it. And he's going to get, I think UDB is going to get $100,000 a year for 2 years. So it's going to be a $200,000 grant. And he has Dave has, and I assume on behalf of UDB, states that we've got $100,000 of that grant for the fire suppression system. This is a number that I am taking to another agency. I'm taking it to RCAC, and I'll be communicating with them tomorrow. The problem is that we've been trying. I haven't gotten an estimate for this work, and Brandt has said that he would get that kind of thing done, but that hasn't happened yet. So we're a little bit. We need an estimate on the fire suppression system is what we need really badly, and I haven't done it, and because others have said they were going to do it. So that's where we are. Are there any questions about that?
Well, one of the reasons I'm asking is we're closing in on May, and the amended budget and then the 2023 budget have to be done by the end of June. And I'm trying to figure out how I factor in any money that we as a town might have to put in for fire suppression, which is the most immediate need for funds. And so is it 100? I'm not going to make myself very clear, but like, so let's say UDB is getting 100,000. Is that 100,000 their contribution? Let's say it's 200,000. Is that 100 solely their contribution, or are they making that 100,000 and then we divide the other 100,000? Or are we dividing by the percentage the full 200,000? And I'm just using 200 because it's an even number and it's low enough that I can do the math. So, am I making myself clear, Jim, what my question is? Like, how do we?
Not entirely, but all I can really answer is that as far as I know, it's a straight 100,000 that UDB owns and they want to put toward the suppression system. So if the thing comes in less than 200,000, then that's what I'm going to ask from RCAC and from the USDA. So I'm really kind of stuck here with this estimate thing, which I keep hearing is on its way or something. But I guess, beyond that, we're stuck until we get an estimate, and then we actually sit down and talk dollars and cents. So I don't know.
Okay, so could I make a suggestion that maybe somebody contact Tri-Hearst, since Tri-Hearst did all the work on the new school and Tri-Hearst has already looked at the community center or the CCC, and they may be able to come in pretty quickly and give an estimate?
I will ask a member of the committee to do exactly that.
That would be great, because I'm getting a little nervous about how I work with the accountant to factor in any costs that we might have in the next year or in 2022 fiscal year. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for your questions. Any other questions that anybody has?
So is your next meeting on Tuesday? Next Tuesday?
No, our next meeting is next month. They link with this group.
Okay, because just to expedite.
Yeah, I agree. It would be nice to expedite.
Yeah.
I'm doing all I can to expedite, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I'm doing the minutes, I'm doing the agenda, and I'm trying to figure out a bunch of stuff here. So.
Well, thanks.
It's not easy for me. I'm just slow. I'm just very slow.
You're doing great, Jim. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Jim. So moving to number 3, the Dark Sky Committee had a meeting on April 13th, and the purpose of the meeting was to look at International Dark Sky Week and kind of lay out a schedule for what events we're going to be doing. The poster, I'm just going to move so I can grab the poster. People will be seeing it posted at the post office, at the schools, the usual suspect places, some businesses. But what we laid out for a schedule is April 26th at 7:45 p.m. would be the guided walk. So that's the walk through the historic area with folks from the committee doing some looking at various businesses, various houses. We talked about what we wanted to look at, and so the committee has reached out or is reaching out to these various businesses and homeowners so they won't see a trail of people coming and wondering what's going on. So there's the guided walk. Then on April 28th at 7:45 p.m., there's going to be the light measuring, again, which will be a walk and trying to get a sense of lights, and the same thing applies, talking to people ahead of time, letting them know that we'll be measuring lights if they're okay with that. And that will help us with the work that Lou has already started with doing light measurements for the International Dark Sky application. Then for those two events, we're asking people to bring a flashlight that's red, or if you don't have a red light, a headlamp or a flashlight, we'll be using red balloons over your flashlight to keep the light down. Then on April 30th, it's starting at 7 o'clock, there's a Stargazing Party that will take place at 8 o'clock p.m. But between 7 and 8 p.m., people should bring their telescopes or their viewing devices, and we'll have people to help them set up, hopefully, their own devices. Sarah Burak is working on kind of that. Well, she's working on all of it, but on that in particular, since she's the one that's pretty knowledgeable about the setups. Then that was pretty much what we talked about in that meeting, with the idea that Sarah and I will begin to work on the pre-application for the International Dark Sky designation. We have another meeting set up, but I don't think I wrote down in my notes when that is, but we'll be doing another meeting. But this is the one just on the International Dark Sky Week. So any questions or thoughts? We're going to try to do a blast out a couple of times, as well as posters.
I was in Cortez today, and I was able to pick the posters up. And I just want to thank Diana Davidson of Business Owners of Bluff, and Sarah Burak of Friends of Cedar Mesa for creating the poster and bringing it over to the printer in Cortez, which they were able to print the next day, and gives it's really a nice poster. So I just want to thank them for their creativity.
Thanks. It really looks good. I think people will like it, and we also talked about the kind of the design, and Diana, as indicated, did the basic bulk of the design, and then Sarah and a couple other people weighed in on information. But one of the things we focused on was the safety factor of walking through the town in the dark, and hence the lights. And we'll have somebody at the start and somebody at the end, and we'll have somebody on call with a vehicle in case somebody gets tired and doesn't want to do the whole walk. So thanks for the thank you, Linda. Any other questions? Then moving to number 4, I would like to advise everyone we've hired David Sanderson, who's an accountant, because months ago I had approval from the council to find an accountant and to sign a contract. I have done that. I didn't want to wait any longer once he agreed to be the accountant to sit 2 weeks while we waited, and he's already started working on different projects. For instance, there's a risk assessment that we have to do by June 30th. He started on that. He worked on transparency issues, not issues, the transparency filings. There's also, he's looking at the 2022 fiscal year budget, and we'll be working with me on what amendments we may need to make. He's looking at the 2023. Linda had worked with Polaris and Dave to get him access into Polaris, so he's in our program now and able to work. And he's been working with Linda on a couple of things. So overall, I think we've got a very good start to streaming some of the routine, quarterly, every half year, every full year, all the things that we have to do financially that Linda and I have been doing. They'll be able to pick up a lot of it. And it's $750 a month. At the end of the fiscal year, when we do our audit, he works on the audit with Larson rather than Linda and myself. Well, I'm going to back out of that one. Rather than Linda having to do all of the pulling of documents and question answer, and she'll be working with Dave, who will be working with Larson and company to do the audit. That's a $3,000 charge, but it also, in all probability, will reduce some of the audit fee. It most definitely will free up more of Linda's and my time. So it comes out, I think I calculated to $12,000 a year. So I will have that on the agenda next meeting, which is May 3rd. Make sure you all get a copy of the contract, have a chance to look at what I signed, and then just have you ratify it, just to be sure that no one has any issues with it. But I signed it and he's on board. Any questions, any thoughts?
No, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for getting them on. I think that'll help both of you for sure. But I think it's good to have somebody that you can communicate with and that you like. I had one question. Did he look at the public treasury investment fund, the PTIF? Is that
Not yet? No, that'll be when he looks at the 2022 budget, the amended budget.
okay? I just wondered if there were any holdups on anything I needed to help you get it.
Actually, as soon as, what I'm hoping, since we have to have an amended budget hearing and a budget hearing for 2023, I'm hoping that in May, he and I can work on getting all of that organized so that we can come to a work session and go over it and everybody can ask their questions. I realized in my brain that I had talked with him in 2019 and he worked with us on an amended budget back then. And I realized the difference between 2019 and 2022 is that I actually know a little bit more than I knew in 2019. So some of the things that he was talking about that went over my head made a lot more sense after 3 years. So having him on board is going to be really helpful in terms of doing work, but also, as he said, he will do the monthly reconciliations along with Brant and Linda, so that if there is an error, rather than catching it at the audit, we catch it up front, which we've been lucky, or we've been very diligent. We haven't had those errors, but the larger we grow, the more likelihood there is of an inadvertent mistake that needs to be corrected. And I'd much rather hear it on a monthly basis than to hear it, in the public audit. So.
Yeah, I think it's more efficient in many ways myself. It's just more efficient. He can do that pretty fast compared to you guys are doing a really good job, but it's taking you, all your lives,
So I will still be the bookkeeper. I mean, I will still be doing quite a bit of, because the checks and everything have to be into Polaris to be able for him to access. It's going to be really helpful when we have these grants happening, because, there's a lot of complicating things. And he works on Saturdays and Sundays because he's contacted me several times with questions. So he seems really pretty gung-ho anyway, and easy to work with.
Yeah, Linda will still be doing a fair amount of work, but it will certainly help streamline things and make it a lot smoother than us struggling through every year at the end of the year trying to put it together. So I'm happy, very happy. All right, then if there are no other questions, moving to number 5, which is status of applications for the town manager. I'd like to have a vote to close off the advertising at this point and be able to move forward with reviewing the applications that we have and making some decisions. The main thing is I need a vote to cut off the advertising.
I'll make that vote, or I'll make that motion to close the applications for town manager.
I second it.
And I would just like to make a comment or a question that you got enough applicants in that you're happy?
Yes, I'm happy. I had hoped we'd draw a bigger pool, but we haven't, and we haven't had anything new come in over a month. So I think it's time to, make a decision based on the applicants. And
No, that's great. That's great. I'm glad you got some, and that's great.
so Jim made the motion, Linda seconded it. All in favor, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Then it's 4-0. I will let everybody know the next step, but I will make sure no more ads are running and we pull the ones that we've got, and then I'll make the applications available to all of you. Then number 6, Linda, I think that's yours on the Career Expo.
So I needed to RSVP them, and by the time I RSVP'd them, it had closed because they were making materials and different things for the activities. So I ended up not doing it. For that.
No, it's just an opportunity to get a nice lunch and meet people. So it wasn't anything that was, crucial. So thanks for making the effort. Some of these things we're not going to be able to do everything. So moving to the Easter egg hunt. I wasn't here again for that. How did it go? I put down Linda and Lou because I was pretty sure they'd go. I didn't know if Jim or Brant. I knew Brant wouldn't be there.
Yeah, it came off. It was fun. The adults had, I think, as much fun as the kids. I know the adults outnumbered the kids by quite a few, but it was fun. And they opened up that whole area to hide eggs, and yeah, it was just a fun little social thing. But there was a competing one the day before up in Blanding, a big Easter egg hunt, and there was also one over at UNHS that same day. So, and just the advertising element, I don't think we got the word out real well. So there weren't too many, but the ones that were there had a great time. The little ones in town, anyway, everybody had fun, but came off just fine. They were happy enough that they would like to try to do it again next year. Bill and Tricia Spear are the ones that were kind of heading it up there, but they had a whole ton of volunteers.
One of the things I thought was interesting is when Bill and Tricia and I were meeting, we deliberately limited the advertising because it was the first year and COVID is still with us. And so rather than to do a really big blast, the three of us just arbitrarily decided to limit the advertising to within town so that we wouldn't get a lot of outside people or get overwhelmed the first year because they had indicated that the fort would like to make it an annual thing. So we didn't want to be overwhelming. I assume people contributed eggs.
Yep, there were lots of dyed eggs, and there were all the plastic eggs. They were all those were filled with little things, and then they also had a bunch of prizes, which I'm not sure where those came from, but I saw a soccer ball go by and that kind of thing. So, Linda, I think you wanted to.
Oh, I was going to say my 11-year-old nephew got a soccer ball and had a great time. So, he's local. It's really fun for him.
So, like Lou said, Ed or Bill and Tricia kind of did the fort part of it and had a lot of volunteers that put together the plastic eggs, got the prizes, which were really good prizes, like Jim was just saying. It turned out the plastic eggs, they were small eggs, and there were 300. We had a ton of eggs, but there were several people in town who contributed boiled eggs, and so it was pretty fun. And it lasted a little less than an hour. So it went well.
Good, good. I know that Trish and Bill were concerned that we wouldn't have very many people, but then the competing factor was we didn't want too many. So it sounds like it worked out for next year. Something bigger, maybe. We have a little machinery being worked on here, so I'm sorry if it's a little noisy. All right, then moving to number 8. Luann, I think you met with Amanda Cochran and whoever else showed up.
Yeah, so that was, what day did I say that was? April 8th, I think. Anyway, she was coming. Reagan White-Skaluski could not show up, so it turned out to be just Amanda Cochran and Joe Hubbard and myself. And we met out at the mission and spent about an hour together. Joe gave us a really great tour of the mission, which was fun, and showed her a lot of the projects, what AmeriCorps had worked on and where they stayed, that sort of thing. I took her over and showed her where they had been housed. She was very excited about everything that was done. She's the assistant director, I believe. She seemed like the director. She seemed like the one in charge of setting up these groups, but I'm pretty sure she's officially the assistant director. She's from Sacramento, and she's kind of the one that decides where these groups go and who gets groups and what time of year. And so there's the possibility of doing the same time next year of October. It was at 6 weeks. It kind of ran into December. And then there's also an opportunity of January 15th for a 12-week series. And there's Joe was really pushing for that one, and so was she. She thought that we could do the 12-week one. He has enough work out there to do the whole 12 weeks. But I told her that we had the new community center, town hall, Dene Bakea project going, and she said that would be a great project. She said they can do like safe sidewalk if we wanted to do connect the school across the, outside of the school, just even a block or something. She could put people on. If you have all the materials and you have a supervisor, they bring the crew and they lay all the concrete. They've done a lot of sidewalks through parks and that kind of thing. She said that he wants to have them work on the tiny houses. He'll have 4 of them constructed, but they'll need 3 more to put together. The giant cane was talked about to see if there was more in town to get that eradicated so it doesn't escape to the river bottom. Anyway, there were lots of ideas tossed around. The one thing that I thought, I encouraged her on the 12-week and the January through the March section. They also have a program that's a VISTA, that's a 1-year commitment, 1 person. And so she was sort of hoping that maybe one of those tiny houses is where a VISTA person could live. So I thought I'd mention that to you, especially because maybe there's a job type that would fit into that category. And then the other is completely different. The other 12-week thing is the crew, and it's a separate program. But I wondered town-wise, clerk-wise, working with the new manager-wise, something like that might be a VISTA position. And I think that was it. But she was very happy. She was really encouraged by all the work and all the ideas through town. I showed her the fire station. There's work to be done there. There's just work all over town. So she realized that. But she said that like when there's a remodel going on at the CCC, the old school, new school town hall, that is a totally usable place to have help come up here at the original community center. If there's painting or whatever, they can do that kind of work. So there were lots of options, but she's hoping to send them back in that January time.
Thank you. That sounds really good. I hope they do come out.
I'll talk with Amanda. I've met her on Zoom calls, and I'll talk to her. I've got a couple of ideas about maybe tying into the VISTA issue, and then I'll talk with Joe about what the likelihood of a tiny house might be. One of the things that I'm thinking about would be we have a fair number of volunteers doing different projects, and it might be nice to have somebody tying all those together in a management kind of situation to oversee all the volunteers we have. But there are a couple other things, so I'll get a hold of Amanda in the next couple of weeks and talk with her. But
Okay.
thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and it sort of seemed like, it could be something that the town and the mission shared that person or through, whatever projects turned up, or it could be that there could be two. I don't know. She seemed like she was not exactly pushing the Vista, but definitely was offering that service and that person.
And generally with the Vista positions, at least if my recollection is correct, when I talked with her a year or 6 months ago, is that frequently you have to put up a little bit of money, but it's such a small nominal amount for the full-time position that it's really, really worth it. So I'll talk to her about it and get more information.
Okay.
So thank you.
Any other question?
I think we're good. All right, then moving to number 9, the general discussion on temporary signs. I just want to point out, when we're looking at, in our work session, at the ordinances and the edits on the general zoning, take a look at the temporary signs versus the permanent signs. I have a couple questions, but I want to be sure that we've all read through that section in particular. And the temporary signs are defined as the ones that aren't permanent, and they can stay up for up to 20 days, either consecutive or tacked on. So like, maybe 3 days at one point, 3 days at another point, but no more than 20 days. And we're starting to see those types of signs more regularly. And so I think we should have a discussion in our work session, but I did want to just draw it to everyone's attention so you can be thinking about it. Any questions about that? Or all right, then moving to planning and zoning. Luann, I believe you have this one.
Yes, they had a meeting the day after our last meeting. Let's see. And it is on YouTube, and so is this meeting. We're going live at the moment. So there were no land use clearances, but there was a sign request, and that's at Cadillac Ranch. There are new owners there, and they asked to redo their sign, and that went through fine. It met all of the sign ordinance requirements, so that passed through pretty quickly. The main thing that to pass on is that they would like a joint meeting. They would like to make sure that the goals that they have for this next stretch of time align with what town council wants to do. They would like the attorney at a joint meeting. They would like town council, planning and zoning, Bluff Waterworks, and the attorney. So they were hoping for that, just to keep everybody on the same page and everybody kind of working together on the same direction. So that was one request. They are working still on the edits. Tomorrow night is their meeting. No, they're not working on the edits. Sorry. Tomorrow night is their meeting, and they're doing working on some forms to make sure there are enough forms to go with all these different requirements that they need to look at. They want to make sure that the forms are all in line. So if somebody needs something, they can pass them out. And at the end, and the other, Marcia has been following the Utah League of Cities and Towns, the legislative updates. He said there was a big affordable housing requirement, but it hits the cities and not towns. And a lot of that was tied in with travel zones, getting people to and from work and that kind of thing. So they're putting more push on that to help people out. There's a zero-scaping rule that even if you have an HOA and they say you have to have green grass here and you have to have this green tree or whatever, that's no longer a law. They cannot do that in a HOA sort of subdivision thing. They cannot require water, or they cannot stop you from doing zero-scaping or water resistant, in the words. But the the water saving plants, they cannot resist and cannot outlaw. So you can do that if it's your choice to landscape your place that way. Food trucks was on the legislative part of, you can say where they can be, but you can't ask them how they get whatever they do, how they get their water or how they get set up. You can decide where they can go as a town. And then billboards was another one that was something that they were encouraging towns to look at. But other than that, other than the meeting tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, YouTube or on their regular address.
Yeah, I'm going to go back and take a look at the food trucks. There was something more about that because the food trucks are one thing that we're going to need to talk about. So that if right up until now, every town, every county, every entity could request that they get a permit, and now you only have to have the permit from one place within the state. So if we were to institute permits for food trucks, the only people who would have to get a permit is somebody who doesn't have one from anywhere else. And then the other was, which I found to be very odd, is that we can regulate where they are, but we cannot ask them how they intend to comply with health requirements, which I think is just wrong. But there's nothing I can do about that, because if I could do something, I mean, the idea that you can't go in and say, how are you taking care of the heating, the cooling, the food, all of that, it's off the table. So I guess Luann will be putting all those food trucks under the listening tree and not worrying about it. And it's just mind-boggling to me how much the state wants to regulate versus leaving it to local, kind of local control. But
So one thought, and I'm not arguing with you, but it's sort of like the restaurants possibly. They go under a different permit system. They go through the state. So you're kind of, in a way, alleviating that from us. So we don't need to go into any of them, the trading posts or the restaurants, and check it out. That's kind of lifted from our responsibility. And so I think the food trucks have become such a thing that they travel from place to place, and they want them to be able to have the one permit and then be able to go to that town and that town and that one and not be bogged down with permits. So that's kind of my take on it. But if that makes you feel any better, I don't know.
no, I don't mind the one permit at all. What I mind and what I object to, if I read it correctly, and who knows if I did, is the idea that as a town we can't ask any of those questions about how they're actually managing compliance with health standards. There's no way in a county this size that the public health person can run from food truck to food truck to food truck during the season on a daily basis. And that's what's mind-boggling to me. But I like food trucks, so I'm happy if we have them. It's not a problem. Anything else, Lou, on planning and zoning, or anybody have another question? Okay, Linda, financial report.
Okay, Brant did the March reconciliation between our accounting package and our bank. Ann and I did the transparency and all the other quarterlies that we have to do this time at the end of the quarter. I also sent out the bills to the senior center and UNDC for their portion of utilities and the janitor. So I sent everybody the list of financials for this month. And so are there any questions, and can someone motion to pay them?
I have a question. Are those just for the month, or for some of those for the quarter? Those bills?
Those are monthly.
So that's about $6,200 or something like that for the month, right?
I didn't actually add it, but it's, whatever this
It comes out
is.
to about over $6,000. Okay, that's good. a motion to accept and pay.
I'll second.
Any other questions? Then all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Then it's 4, that's unanimous. Thanks, Linda. I noticed I left off other, so real quickly on the other, the cemetery district applications are open, so if somebody wants to be on the Bluff Cemetery Board, they're open until the end of the month. If you don't have the information, get a hold of me. I'll probably have Linda do a blast with that again, but the request is to Mac McDonald, and the primary requirements are that you be a resident of Bluff and you be a voter. And so if anybody can get their application in, that would be great. There are 3 openings. And then the other is that this is Volunteer Week nationally, so I'd like to publicly thank all of our volunteers, of which we have a lot, including the obvious, elected officials. Planning and zoning doesn't get paid enough to not call them volunteers. They get a small stipend, but they're hardly paid what their value is. We have people working on the parks. We have people on different boards. We just have a lot of volunteers, and Ford has been really doing a lot of things around town. You might have noticed they picked up trash on the highway a couple of weeks ago. They've cleaned out storm drain, whatever those ditches. We've got a lot of volunteers, and I'd like to say thank you, but particularly to those firefighters and EMS people that not only volunteer but lay their life on the line for us. So thank you. I wish there was a way to do more than just say thanks. Anybody else have anything to do?
A couple things. First, Craig Benally is here tonight, and he's our new IT guy for getting us on to our YouTube channel. And anybody who wants to watch a meeting other than just hear the audio, if you go to YouTube and search simply Town of Bluff, leave out everything else. Don't put Utah, or you'll get all the advertisings. You will find it right there. But he is here tonight, and just still not doing in-person meetings. That was one thing I forgot to mention on planning and zoning, that they asked about that. They asked each other if they needed to be in person. They wanted to know what we were doing and what we had been trying to do. I said we hadn't moved to that yet, and they are a little concerned about not being in person, but I said that we have a lot more audience being here, and that we thought about doing some of this hybrid sort of idea, but that did come up there. I also wanted to say that the Melvin Gaines funeral was yesterday. He was the longest lived person in Bluff, other than probably some of the Navajo people that live just across the river from us. But he came when he was 2. He was almost 91, and he left only for the Korean War. So he was a product of Bluff in a big way. Had an 8th grade education from Bluff Elementary and the San Juan School District. But they did an honor guard. They came from Salt Lake to do an honor guard because he was an Army veteran of the Korean War. And they also did fire department tribute because he and Betty was the first fire chief, and Melvin, the 2 of them were the fire department, the first fire department in Bluff. And in those days, there was no siren and no pages, and they'd run to KNC and find Betty, and then run out to the fields and find Melvin and come into town and get the fire truck going. But it was a nice service for him. The fort did a after reception for the family.
On that note, I will make a motion to adjourn. Thank you very much, Luann. That was a good summary.
It's 6:55.
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Well, it's unanimous again to adjourn. Everybody have a good night. Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay.